Hello and welcome back to our another episode of Let's Talk version. We are here joined by Dan. Hey there, Dan. How are you?
Life is wonderful, buddy. Got a lot of things done. Last night was at poker. Played 5 rounds. It was really, really awesome.
Woo!
To be honest with you, I lost one of those really bad because there's this stupid guy next to me. Of course, I call him stupid. He was the guy. The guy was he was professional, really. And this guy saw that he had more chips than I do. We call this like these bully, right? These guys
Right.
who have a lot of chips. They bully everybody else. They just raise it all the time.
Right.
This guy kind of saw my chips. These 5 or 6 left. It's like, let's just play with this guy. And this guy raised it until I could not raise with him, so I just had to go all in.
Right.
And I went all in, and the cards were not good, buddy. So he got a flush, got everything, and it was a very, very tough moment. But fortunately, I won 4 rounds, and overall, it was a plus. So actually, I made more money than I lost. It was pretty good.
That's great. So I'm really happy to see finally making some money.
Well, we got to do something, buddy.
Well, yeah, that's true. Sometimes you gotta, anyhow, joke aside. So today we're going to be talking about this wonderful book called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Mark Manson. And there's so many things I like about this book, but one particular thing that actually I like a lot is the name itself, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. I mean,
wow, man. Can you imagine like a best-selling title with the word fuck in it?
Exactly.
I have seen some books with the titles like assholes or idiots or punks even, but this was like the best. Like literally the word fuck literally in the middle of the title. Pretty amazing. And I really enjoyed it. But of course, I also read this book in a few other languages, and the translations tend to be a lot more polite than the original version. So they use a more polite version in the languages to resemble the word fuck in English. But I think the least polite version of all, of course, is the English version.
The main version. Interesting. That's actually good to know. Okay, and also on the cover, it says a counterintuitive approach to living a good life. Which it isn't counterintuitive. Nobody thinks like if you're trying to live a good life, you got to say like I'm not going to give a fuck about life or something. So yeah, it is a little bit counterintuitive. We're gonna dive in. I'm gonna go chronologically, sort of chapter by chapter, drop some wisdom, sort of the book, not of myself, and then we're gonna elaborate on that. Okay, so the first chapter is called "Don't Try." Which is, again, a little bit like counterintuitive. What do you mean don't try? Are we not supposed to try? But so I'm going to quote 2 pieces of this chapter, and then I'm going to ask you to elaborate on them. So one piece is saying, not giving a fuck does not mean being indifferent. It means being comfortable with being different. Which is actually very interesting. I actually really like it. So because all of us are different in a way or the other, and it's just a matter of being comfortable with it. And the second quote is, to not give a fuck about adversity, you must first give a fuck about something more important than adversity.
Exactly.
Can you elaborate on these 2?
You see, pal, when people think of the word or the phrase, don't give a fuck about anything, I heard a lot of such things from losers, most of which were like drug addicts and basically lowlives. So ultimately, I really believe that when people think of this, like, you see, man, there's a best-selling title that says you should not give a fuck. I was right. I'm a loser. I was right. But ultimately, it all comes down to not giving a fuck about the things that are either not important or are beyond your sphere of control. And guess what? This is not something new in the world of self-help. We heard about this many years ago in the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey, where he said, in life, we have 2 basically circles. We have a circle of concern and a circle of influence. Circle of concern are made of things that we are concerned about, such as the economy or our income or whatever it is. And the circle of influence are the things we can do, like, for example, cutting back on expenditures versus hoping the economy gets better. You can't make the economy get better. That's not part of your power in this case. So ultimately, this title really is all about understanding that when you want to care about things that you have nothing to do with, you have no control over, or are not important, you are living a very stupid lifestyle. And just don't be stupid. Don't give a damn about things that you cannot control whatsoever. That's the major theme for not caring, basically. And that is why, basically, being indifferent in this concept does not mean being careless or clumsy. It just means knowing what matters and what doesn't. knowing what you have control over and what you don't.
That's very true. Another thing that I really like about this book in general is just it says fuck a lot. And
exactly, the word is just filled all over the pages in every goddamn page. I think this guy, I have some theories. Maybe this guy apparently had something going on during that writing process or something. Maybe he was being always distracted while writing the book. Like imagine like somebody says like, "So I'm writing. Oh fuck, look at those. Oh shit. Oh my god." Like I don't know exactly, but overall. It's a great title, and I'm very glad I didn't read this. Actually, this is the only best-selling title I did not read at all in English. So I don't have any clue about how many times the word "fuck" is used in that book.
Oh,
but
wow,
I have some ideas of why this happened.
Amazing. That's true. Wow. So we don't try. The next chapter talks about happiness is a problem, and again, it's sort of counterintuitive because nobody thinks of happiness as a problem. You're like, okay, that's the ultimate goal. Like you want to be happy in life, right? But that's beside the point. It doesn't mean that that's not something you want. And we talked about this in the book called Obstacles the Way, is that you actually want problems, and happiness is the ultimate problem, which is amazing.
Exactly.
So I'm going to, again, quote some stuff from this chapter as well. So it says, problems never fucking go away. Again, the word fuck. Problems never go away.
So to all of our listeners, if you don't like the word fuck, just find another podcast that is much more polite. Because this podcast specifically is filled with the word fuck. All over. There's fuck written all over it, basically.
Specifically this episode, like it's going over the board. Okay. So problems never fucking go away. They just improve. Life is essentially an endless series of problems. The solution to one problem is merely the creation of the next one. Again, we talked about this in Art of Not... the subtle... No,
the obstacle's the way. Exactly. Our mind is now full of fuck, basically. we got fucker brain right now, literally.
Yeah, it's just jumping. Anyhow, the last bit says, don't hope for a life without problems. Instead, hope for a life full of good problems. Good problems. That's the key word here. Good. Elaborate on this. Like we talked about it very, very in depth in that other book, The Obstacles Way. But still, we want to talk about it. Happiness is a problem.
You see, in this chapter, the author criticizes the self-help industry that promotes a happy lifestyle and mindset. You see, Take a look at the books with the title "Happiness" in them. Unfortunately, the major problem with most of these books is that they believe that you should always be happy. That is cheerful, smiling, jumping up in the air, I don't know, blue sky. This is, from my perspective, what's wrong with the current self-help industry. Of course, it's just a business, so you cannot really blame them, because when you want to sell these things, I mean, somebody who is generally very happy will not go and buy a lot of books about happy books. Let's be honest. So he is already happy, so he reads other types of titles as well. So the kind of people who oftentimes go for these types of books that is all about happiness generally lack happiness or are very depressed. So for these people, of course, in that short period of recovery, they need to think happy, life is beautiful, change your mindset, that kind of stuff. But generally, in the long run, this is life. And life is meant to be lived with problems, challenges, difficulties, and losses. I mean, think back to my poker game, you see?
Right.
So in that poker game, I won 4 times, lost once, of course, but that loss was much more than each one of those winnings. But when you put it all together, I actually managed to win more than I lost. But ultimately, that's part of life. In all games, there's winning and there's losing. In all parts of life, there are efforts you make that do not result into, for example, getting what you want, and you have to try again or learn from it and wait and be patient. So frustration is embedded in life. This is part of life. That's what strength is all about. Why we admire those who are strong. Because strength is a necessity to live well in this world. Strength means when things aren't going your way and things aren't well, then you do not just drop the towel and give up. You just keep pushing forward, right? Because you know that that's part of life. So in this book, it criticizes this approach of self-help to happy thinking. I don't know, these mantra things, and instead focus your attention on living a realistic lifestyle and try to enjoy these problems, because that's just a part of life. Again, in the same fashion, similar to The Obstacles the Way. And more importantly, what I love the most about this chapter was a part where it says, a good life is not a life where you don't have problems. It is a life where you like the kind of problems you solve. This means that ultimately success in life isn't just about the results. It is also about the battles. And the
Right.
happiest people, the truly happy people, not the ones who, these mantra guys, I'm talking about like truly happy and fulfilled individuals who actually achieve success in life are the ones who generally have found the right battles in life.
Right.
Not, I mean, it's not just about the victory. I mean, it's not just about the victory. It's about loving the battle. What kind of fight? Because life is is filled with problems. It's full of problems. So what kind of suffering, what kind of battles, what kinds of difficulties do we have to go through to get there? I mean, let's
Right.
be honest. For us, for example, let's be honest. When we have to arrange and have our podcast, we're gonna have 2 shows a week. This takes a lot of effort on both our sides, and we are both of us. We're extremely busy, so
Right.
we have to make sacrifices to make these podcasts happen. But guess what? We enjoy it. So we enjoy this battle, this challenge and difficulty. And this is just one example out of many other examples that we actually ourselves are involved with on a daily basis. So you want to enjoy the battles. That's why I recommend people to not think about what they want. For example, if someone comes to me and says, "Daniel, I want to be rich," I say,
Right.
"Okay, thank you very much." So that's not the goal. That's just the byproduct of living a good life. What kind of life do you want to have? What kind of legacy do you want to live? That you want to leave behind? What kind of basically challenges do you want to overcome to get to that money? And it's like, well, I don't know. I never thought about it. I just want to be rich. So that's the biggest problem. And I think the key to that is to understand that whatever you do, you can always be the best at it and make a lot of money in it. But more importantly, you want to focus on figuring out what kind of battles you like to have in your life.
Amazing. You actually went a little bit ahead of this chapter too. Like you talked about a lot. I mean, it's all connected, so I don't blame you necessarily.
That's right. I love
But,
that book, man.
yeah.
Fuck this. I love that book. That was a fucking awesome book.
Yeah, it is. It's very good. So the next chapter talks about, and I have a lot to say about this. You're not special, and it's very true. It doesn't mean what I get out of this is that nobody's special. Like we are all unique, but then there's nobody's special. It's like not you're not like I don't know the son of God or something, unless you're Jesus. That's a different story.
That's right. That's right.
which you're not.
On one of our episodes by in the future.
Hopefully, the big bro. But
That's
the
right.
point is, like, of course you're not. So the point is, it's so nobody's special. This is not about you being different, you being looked upon, you have extra talent. No, we are. I mean, that's fair. We're not necessarily all on the same playing field. Maybe it's not level on some aspect, but that's again another problem that you deal with, and you deal with it. So I don't like this idea that a lot of kids are raised with, or I don't know about this if it's majority or not, but definitely a lot because I've seen them a lot. Is that they are told by their parents how precious they are, how amazing they are. And that's just a misguided opinion, and it just tolls on the kid eventually when he grows up and goes to the real world. So that notion I think is very flawed, in my opinion, and I really love this chapter for that very reason. What are your takes on it?
Well, first of all, about what you mentioned regarding parenting, I think the majority of the reasons behind the fact that some people think of themselves to be special is actually because they did not receive enough genuine love and care when they were with their parents. So personally, I'm not against showing that you care when it comes to your children. I'm not against saying that they are precious to you, but more importantly,
that makes sense.
It's important. That's right, because oftentimes many of these individuals who think of themselves to be special, they did not receive enough love and care as children. So I'm not against that. However, there is a fine line between loving your children versus spoiling your children.
Exactly. That's my point.
I think the best is done when in a household there is 2 types of love. Again, we can talk about parenting later on. I think you and I both know a lot about parenting, by the way, at a very young age. But the thing is this. The ideal form of parenting is when one side offers conditional love, ideally the father, and one side offers unconditional love. And this creates a balance. Right. However, unfortunately, in the modern world, a lot of the parents both offer unconditional love. That is, they say, I will love my child no matter what. And this makes them spoiled, obviously. They think like, oh, they're super fucking special and they're, God's gift to humanity. So ultimately, a child has to be loved unconditionally by one parent and conditionally. That is, for example, the father says, listen, you made a mess with your studies. I'm disappointed in you. Okay.
Right.
Like, he needs to understand that, because in the real world, we will have setbacks and obstacles. And if we are not prepared for it as children, then as adults, we'll, of course, have a lot of problems.
Right.
So ultimately, that's for the case of loving your parents. Secondly, about being special, what you yourself mentioned pretty well, is that being special is very different than being unique. Being special generally comes with a sense of entitlement. And more importantly, the problem with feeling that you're special is this. People who feel they're special, they feel bad about facing with challenges and obstacles. They say, guess what? I'm special. I should not face with challenges. I should not lose money. I should not lose my partner. I should not lose this and that. I should not. So they live with this lifestyle and this belief system that they are so special, so they should never undergo the same challenges that everybody else undergoes. And that's the problem. So you want to think of yourself as unique. And more importantly, you want to love yourself. You want to respect yourself. I am not against love and respecting for yourself. I'm not against loving your children. I'm talking about the right way. You can love and respect yourself and still acknowledge the fact that you are just a guy. And sorry to say this very directly, but your poop smells as terrible as everybody else's poop, right? So we're all humans. And because of this, you have to understand that you want to create a lifestyle that you are growing, expanding yourself in order to like yourself even more. And you yourself want to have that sense of unconditional love towards yourself. That is, you want to love yourself as a being, but at the same time, you want to push yourself. I want to get this goal. I got to challenge myself. I got to go for it. And this allows you to understand that you have unique talents, that your DNAs will never be matched by any other human being ever alive in the history or in the future, and that you have a calling in this life. You got to go for it. But ultimately, you're just like everybody else. You're going to have to go through the same challenges that everybody else does. Someday you will die like everybody else. So ultimately, knowing that you're not special but unique can be a tremendous help in terms of appreciating the challenges of life and accepting failure as a necessity on the way to greatness.
Very true, and again, I want to clarify. I didn't mean like you shouldn't love your children. That was a different story. The point was not spoiling,
exactly,
spoiling them over the board, right?
There's a fine line, by the way. Like, unfortunately, I see a lot of parents these days. Sometimes they come to my workshops and seminars, and they have this child that you literally. I mean, like, I love children, but there are some times where I just want to fucking puke on their faces, and at that time,
or they want to puke on you, and
like literally, and I say, dude, I mean, you had this piece of a shit as a son. He's 11. He acts like a fucking 6-year-old. And unfortunately, the problem usually is because they spoil the child by both offering unconditional love.
Right. Yes, that's true. And you wanna. It's raising a child is really difficult. I understand that, but then, that's what you get when you decide you have to, prepare a lot, read a lot, educate yourself on the ins and outs of parenting. I'm not an expert, of course, because I'm not having.
You're an expert in creating children, not in raising them up.
Does it take the expert to create children?
Oh, trust me, it does require a certain level of expertise
on the male's part. Like, it doesn't take anything.
That's right, very well.
You just have to have some natural things. Anyhow, getting past the moment. So the next oh my god. So the next chapter is talking about the value of suffering. And it's a very good thing. Like, suffering is underrated, I think. Suffering is a good thing. And I'm going to read some lines of this chapter. It's not necessarily related to the main subject. Like, it may seem unrelated, but we'll tie it up. 1 second. Bear with us. So it talks about defining good and bad. Excuse me. I lose my voice. So it talks about defining good and bad values. And so the good values are reality-based, socially constructive, immediate, and controllable. Bad values are superstitious, socially destructive, not immediate or controllable. And some examples of good and healthy values are honesty, innovation, vulnerability, standing up for oneself, standing up for others, self-respect, curiosity, charity, humility, and creativity. And some examples of bad, unhealthy values are dominance through manipulation or violence, indiscriminate, indiscriminate fucking, feeling good all the time, always being the center of attention, not being alone, being liked by everybody, being rich for the sake of being rich, as you talked, sacrificing small animals to the pagan gods. So the book talks about these as bad and unhealthy values. And if essentially what we believe, whether suffering is good or bad, are defined by our values, what we define suffering to be. Do we hold it on high pedestal or low? So I personally really like the idea of suffering. Well, I don't want to suffer, of course, but that's beside the point. I'm saying, like, when you suffer, think of it as an improvement on yourself.
Just to point it out for our listeners, Poujix is not a masochist, so he does not like go home and like I love this thing, and like he doesn't like whip himself or something at night. It's all normal.
Beside masochists, nobody likes suffering, and I'm like you, and I'm with you. I don't like it either, but it's valuable. It doesn't mean it's not valuable. If I don't like it, some random Joe might not like $100 bill for some random reason, but it doesn't mean it's not valuable. It is valuable.
That's right.
So
exactly.
And I like this part specifically. I pointed this out in the good values and bad values. There are good values and bad values because, well, that comes out of a value too, I suppose. But then in a society, first of all, we don't want to be destructive, destroying our society. We want to be constructive to our society. So values which do contribute to our society as a whole down the road are defined as good values because we have a very basic value that is our society. But in general, can you elaborate on the suffering part?
You see, first of all, I'm a huge fan of fitness and bodybuilding, especially healthy bodybuilding, because I really believe that. Yesterday I was talking to one of my friend, my business partner, and he uses all sorts of supplements and material that he uses to get into shape.
Right.
And I told him that, dude, this is just a business. Put them aside and do it naturally. So by bodybuilding and fitness, I mean natural. I mean no supplements, no nothing, just perhaps multivitamin minerals and healthy food, because it tells us something very nice. Because when you're at the gym, you're putting pressure on those muscles. You're, in a sense, suffering because it is painful to do that. Let's be honest. In the process of dealing with that pain, you actually become stronger. And once you do fitness on a regular basis, then you're literally conditioning your body and your mind to take pleasure in undergoing temporary pain and suffering in order to achieve long-term strength and success. So that is why I believe that suffering is embedded in life. Now, there is a Buddhistic belief that says suffering is a part of life and we all must suffer. There's a huge difference between going through suffering versus accepting suffering.
Right.
Because it's about your values. If you think of something to be a source of suffering, it will be.
Right.
It's not, of course, then it won't. So it's ultimately about your value system. And as the author mentioned, you want to have the kind of values that allows you to go through the pains in life without experiencing psychological pain. You could experience perhaps physical pain. You could perhaps undergo a lot of stress and anxiety. But ultimately, you want to believe that all of this makes sense. All of this is in order for me to realize my goals and to realize my values. And that is why I think it's very important to design your lifestyle. Unfortunately, most of us in life, we do not design our lifestyles. We ask most of, what are you doing these? It's like, well, I want to go to school. Why? Oh, because I want to get a job. Why? Because I want to make a family. Why? They don't know. They don't know the why. Right, okay. Right. And as Nietzsche once said, famous German philosopher, basically, the one who knows the why can bears any hows. So these guys can tolerate the pain that they are going through because they know why they're doing it. They understand where is the final destination, and this gives them hope. I mean, think about a lot of, maybe you've heard about this, the concentration camp stories during World War II, where a lot of these gentlemen or ladies were kept in isolation, literally minutes or even seconds away from gruesome death. But the ones who made it out of those concentration camps alive were the ones who did have a strong purpose, who did know what they wanted, who didn't know what was it they're fighting for.
Mm-hmm.
And that is ultimately about your value system. So if you have the right values, you can overcome any obstacle or challenge, no matter how painful or how much suffering it actually causes you.
And one of the peoples who didn't actually make out but became famous is one of my personal heroes, is Anne Frank, which we all know about. Well, hopefully do. She had a diary. She was a very young teenager during those eras, and then she wrote a diary, and then diary became available and published eventually down the road. And I
heard a lot of people cried and read that at the same time.
It's amazing. It's literally the essence of these two books that we talked about. We're talking about this and Obstacles Away. It's very amazing how, and for the people who are, so I do have generally the idea of being an optimist, and I talk about it a lot. And a lot of people are like, if you suffered enough in life, you become a pessimist. I was like, Anne Frank has suffered probably more than any of us, and I think is the utmost optimist I've ever known.
Wow.
So yeah, it's uncanny. It's a very good book, and if you didn't read the diary, go read it. It's pretty good. Anyhow, moving on today, because we're going slow and there's so many content here. Moving on to the next chapter, talks about you're always choosing, and that's very true. And again, I really believe, like, a lot of people don't choose just for the sake of not choosing. That's a choice. You're choosing not to choose. So there's no such a thing as not choosing. You're always choosing, and there's always a choice, and you're always choosing it. So can you briefly elaborate on that? I say briefly because we're running out of time.
For sure. Ultimately, life, as you mentioned, is a series of decisions that we have to make. The quality of your life is not the quality of the environment you find yourself in. It is not the quality of the genetic makeup you were given at birth, or the family you brought up in, or any of that stuff. It's not a product of your weather or conditions. It's about the decisions you make. And ultimately, if you want to make a good life, you have to understand that you need to make good decisions. And that requires you to first understand that you do have a choice. Why is it important? If you don't believe you have a choice, then I'm sorry, then you will not make the decisions, and you'll let the society make them for you. They create their own plans. Okay, until 18, this one, then you're going to go to this one, then you're going to get a job, get a family. So they will give you their plans. They say those who don't have goals will have to work for those who do. And ultimately, because of this, once you believe you have a choice, then you will start making decisions, and then you can actually shift your entire destiny by knowing where you're actually headed.
Very good, very good. That's very true. It's always a choice. There's always a choice. And chapter 6 talks about you're wrong about everything, and it's very interesting. Because it in parentheses after that says, "But so am I." And I'm gonna quote again.
That's just to protect his. Like, fuck you, man. What the hell? You're wrong. What? You're wrong about everything too, right? So it's a good disarming.
Right, like exactly. It. So there's no exactly. You don't have that. If you go and say like, okay, so you're wrong too, it's like I just said it. Yes. Yeah. So I'm gonna quote from the book. There's a lot of conventional wisdom out there telling you to trust yourself, to go with your gut, and all sorts of other pleasant-sounding cliches. But perhaps the answer is to trust yourself less. If we're all wrong all the time, then then isn't self-skepticism and the rigorous challenging of our own beliefs and assumptions the only logical route to progress? And I very much agree with that, because I agree specifically with the part of self-skepticism and rigorous challenging. You have an idea, you gotta keep coming back to it and see if it applies to the current situation. It might have worked perfectly a day or two ago. It might not work now because variables change. So I really like that notion. Do you have anything to add to that?
Personally, I'm a huge fan because in NLP we say that your level of certainty will then be backed up by action. So I am not saying you have to live your entire life in a state of uncertainty, because that's not productive at all, because it fails to produce the right state of mind that will lead to taking a lot of action. However, that being said, I believe that what this chapter for me meant was something very simple. That you are always right. Wrong is very different than you could be wrong. True. So I believe that this chapter reminded me of the importance of constant and never-ending practice, as well as being a lifetime student. People oftentimes tell, like, "Oh, dude, I don't need to read any books. I got a PhD." The fact of the matter is that you can never, ever stop learning. And this chapter is a huge reminder that no matter how certain you are about your feelings and how much you believe in your convictions in life and business and whatever, you could be wrong. And that is precisely why you need to constantly improve your level of knowledge and study and somehow become more intelligent and more informed. And
Right.
that is what this chapter really means for me. It means that you have to focus your attention on always learning new things because you could always be wrong. So becoming a lifetime student will allow you to constantly expand your knowledge.
And I like to quote something from the book, which actually quoted from Aristotle, and that is, it is the mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it. Which is wonderful because we think about thoughts, but we usually tend to accept them first and then think about them. So it's actually very interesting to think about a thought and then not accepting them. Very true. And moving on to the next chapter talks about failure is the way forward. I think we don't have to really elaborate on this chapter because we did.
It's quite obvious.
Yeah, the obstacle is the way we talked about it the whole episode. So I'm just going to blow past it. And we talked about the obstacles the way. If you haven't listened to that episode a little bit, it's self-explanatory. Don't think obstacles are bad. They're good. Go listen to that episode. Next chapter talks about the importance of saying no. Holy moly. I love this chapter already. I lost my quote. Give me 1 second. Okay, here. Action isn't just the effect of motivation. It's also the cause of it.
Hold on a second, buddy. Did you say holy moly?
Yes.
You stole my line, buddy.
Oh, you did?
You know what that, because people used to tell me holy moly in high school because my last name is Mulligan. And they would say holy moly. You got to be kidding me, man. You stole my line. That's it. It's over, man. It's over, man.
Friendship
over. Way. That's too much. But joke aside, man, I'm really impressed. Wow. I think I told you. Wow, buddy. We've been together for so many years. Even we've learned our own phrases now. Pretty awesome. Love it.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. I might have actually adopted it from you. I don't know.
Exactly. Because I use it myself all the time. Because Molly, because I'm Mulligan.
Right,
and I don't like to say holy shit or holy cow or whatever.
Right.
I'm like, holy moly. People just followed me. It was pretty good. I love it.
Yeah, I probably picked it up after you, actually. Yeah, don't remember consciously, but anyhow.
That's right. Very good. Love it, man. Love it. Awesome.
And I'm going to also
let's give a virtual high five. The highest of fives through our Skype. That's right.
Okay, I'm going to also add another quote from this chapter. It says, people with strong boundaries are not afraid of a temper tantrum, an argument, or getting hurt. And it's about giving a fuck about your partner, regardless of the fucks he or she gives. That's unconditional love, baby. So it's about giving a fuck about their fucks too. It's not just about your fucks. You gotta give a fuck about everybody's fuck and not give a fuck at the same time.
Wow, we literally used the word fuck 12 times in the past 10 seconds. That was awesome.
It's amazing. I love it. So, importance of saying no. People have a lot of trouble with saying no, and I do too. I think I'm practicing a lot, of course, but I think that's an issue overall. What do you have to say about that?
You see, I really believe that if you are not capable of disagreeing and saying no, especially to those people who are the most important to you, because let's be honest, if a bum comes on the street, if let's say a loser, like, hey man, you got some change, you can say, no, I'm busy, later. We don't have trouble saying no to the people that are not important to us. The biggest problem and challenge is disagreeing and saying no to the most important people in our lives. Because that's, from my perspective, a recipe for long-term, mutually satisfying relationships. Mm-hmm. The inability to say no, the inability to disagree with someone, in the short term, saves a relationship. But in the long term, eventually ends in quarrels, fights, and separations. Which is why I have this rule that if I disagree, I say it right away, immediately. I do not wait for a few days. I don't pretend it's okay. I say it right away because I know that even though that hurts the other person at the beginning, this actually allows us to have a much longer, much more prosperous relationship down the line. However, those who cannot disagree, those who cannot say no, they end up playing what we call passive-aggressive eventually. And this can destroy the relationship in the long run. And because of this, if you really care about maintaining successful, flourishing, long term, we're talking about years and decades, if not lifetime relationships, then you need to show your disagreements openly and immediately. So that will allow your partner to understand what you are, what you want, what you can do, and what you will not do. And these are very, very important.
Very true. And from that on, we move to the very last chapter. It's entitled, "And Then You Die." Woo. Something beyond ourselves, the sunny side of death. It's very true. You mentioned the rich people who don't, who just has the superficial idea of being rich and having no values. I personally believe there should be something beyond me, because otherwise it's all selfish and it's pointless. The thing that is beyond me, for me, is to add value to the society. I think that's the minimal thing it can exist. Make the place a better place, that when you leave it, than you stepped into it. And I don't really care about afterlife. There are many, many different versions, and whether it exists or not. That's not the argument here. It should be regardless of that. It should be regardless of that. You have to be able to add value while you're here to this world. And that for me is something beyond myself. And the sunny side of death, for me, death is not an issue as long as I achieved that set goal a second ago, meaning adding value to my society, to this world, essentially. So yeah, eventually we die. That's a reality. What do you say?
You see, this chapter is what I think not only completes and concludes the book, but is also a direct, it has direct relevance to the chapter "You're Not Special." Because understanding the fact that we are going to die someday is the most humbling facts of all.
Very
and
true.
That's what I think gives us a good perspective about a lot of things. And in the ancient times, people used to use the word memento mori, which in
Memento
Latin
mori,
means
very true.
exactly, remember that you are mortal,
Yes.
that you will die someday. And this, they even had this like on their coins. They would move around to look at this to remember. And remembering the fact that we're going to die someday, it's a great perspective to not only reduce the amount of pain that we experience as opposed to go through.
Right.
I mean, we can go through a lot of painful situations, but not feel that much pain.
Right.
That's the perspective, right? And secondly, it allows you to understand that you have only so much time to live, that you are here on a mission. You're here to do something wonderful with your life, and that your time will eventually come to an end. Knowing that, this gives life a tremendous amount of meaning and a great sense of urgency, which is why I believe that we should all live with a sense of urgency. Now, living with urgency does not mean that you have to be stressed all the time. It simply means understand how precious life is, and how importantly you can actually add value to this life, to other people, and leave this world a better place once you're gone. And this perspective, I think, is one of the things that truly culminates into having that Zen, peaceful mindset about life.
Very true.
Dude, all these problems, yes, I know it's temporary. I will die someday, but I am ready to make the most of it while I can and get the best, and more importantly, help others along the way as well.
Very true. I agree with that. Eventually we die. I love how it was titled, "And Then You Die." And then you die. Okay.
I'm very glad he didn't say, "And then you fucking die, you fucking get." Something like this.
I think he was very close to say that, but he didn't. Anyhow. So with
maybe even he wrote it, but like the publishers changed it or something.
You never know. You never know. Yeah, it was a very joyful episode of the Let's Talk versions. I think this is my favorite so far. Anyhow. So eventually we come to an end, of course, of this book and the review of this book. We talked about it a lot. And for the very last piece, I want to leave you with the very last paragraph of this book. It might not make a lot of sense, not reading the prior couple of sentences, but I'm going to say it anyways because it's beautiful and it's a very good ending. So here we go. His skepticism breaks and reveals a smile in its place. He gives a slight nod and heads down the trail. I stand above, taking in the view, waiting for my friends to arrive on the peak. That's the end of the book, literally. And with that, we come to the end of this episode. I'm really glad to have you here, Dan, every week to talk about these various topics.
It is my pleasure, buddy. I'm very glad that I'm here with you, and I'm also very glad that last night I won 4 rounds Otherwise, I would have come broke.
You would have a lot of energy. Oh, I mean, I'm sure you would. I know you. There's nothing breaking you down.
Thank you very much, buddy. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and thank you guys for joining us again on this very lovely episode. It was really fun having you guys around. Come tune in again next week. Until then, I'm Puya LJ, aka Poujix. Take care of yourself.